This week on the Policy Bazaar show, I talked to Mayank Batwal, the Chief Executive Officer of Aditya Birla Health Insurance, and we talk about wellness benefits in health insurance.
The journey started about 4 years back. Now, in a heavily under-penetrated health insurance category, I mean, it's very obvious that the opportunity for any new player is very large, and especially backed by large and very, very trusted brands like Aditya Birla Group. But at the same time, to really make the category relevant, our vision is that we play the role of that category, creator and expander, where we have now, expanded the category to segments of consumers which would typically question the relevance of health insurance earlier. But more importantly, play a role of a health partner, a health evangelist in the lives of our consumers, and we bring health first in health insurance. So we have a whole purpose of encouraging and motivating our consumer and their families to stay healthy, to lead successful lives. And that's what we really want to do, and that's the journey that me and my team have embarked on.
Wonderful, like always, to talk to you, Mayank, and thank you very much for being on the show. You know, when I talk to millennials, the feeling one gets is that health insurance seems to be right on top of their agenda, which is very different from people of your and my generation, where we probably woke up in our 40s and suddenly realized one fine day that, hey, I need a health insurance. But today I find, and I don't know what your experience is since you're running this company, that people seem to be, at least the younger people, seem to be far more conscious of the fact that they need to get health insurance. Is that something that you're seeing as well from an age demographic point of view?
So you're right. There is a clear shift in the way the millennial sees this category, though there's still work to be done, if you ask me, in absolute sense. So relatively, I would say they are much more aware. And I think the fundamental reason, at least as I see from where we sit as a category player, is that today's generation actually, it's not about whether I'll get something immediately back. I mean, they want to kind of get the best of everything they are willing to spend, unlike our generation where we were save money for the future and stuff like that. They want to enjoy life. They want to make sure that they get the best possible, and if you provide them the right offering, they're willing to invest or spend whichever way you look at it. Yeah. Because our actual experience clearly shows that what we thought about creating offering for the younger generation has actually turned out to be what we wanted.
So you've been focusing a lot, Mayank, on the wellness space. I mean, I know the regulator talked about it in 2016, but a lot of your products seem to be emanating out of the wellness space. Can you take us through that? What's the innovation there?
So, there's a fundamental belief that actually made us look at that model. And I really, relate very, very deeply with it. So the whole idea is that consumers no one wants to fall ill or sick, right? I mean, if you talk to any consumer and say, hey, you've just bought a health insurance policy, will you want to use it tomorrow? What do you expect the response to be? No, I don't want to fall sick and get into the hospital and then use the benefit. And so the question was that even if you somehow made it relevant for them to buy, they were not necessarily wanting to engage with the category. Whereas everyone wants to engage with something that can actually help them deal with this whole thing of how can I stay healthy, whatever that staying healthy means. For the younger generation, it might mean looking good. For 35, 40 and above, it might mean really doing something about their health. So what? And at the same time, from a business model perspective, economically, it makes a lot more sense for the category to engage with consumers and drive this whole issue of encouraging them to stay healthy, right? Because if consumers stay healthy, your business economics become better. So the question is that why is the category leaving that opportunity? And so whilst we use the word wellness, to me the definition of wellness is much broader, and what the way I look at it is that the whole focus was financing of healthcare spend at the secondary or tertiary stage, where something has happened, a person is in the hospital needing treatment at that stage. Why can't we focus on working with consumers on the promotive and the preventive care? So promote better health, prevent an event, health event from happening, and it makes a lot of sense for both consumers and the health insurance category. And that's where our entire so-called wellness benefit kicks in. So we said, what if we incentivize consumers to stay healthy? Because it will help us make the business model more economically viable. There's something in it for consumers, and in today's digital era, unlike the past, a lot of stuff is possible in terms of creating a scalable, digitally enabled, engagement model, and that's what we are leveraging. So, for younger consumers who were asking this question, how do you make it relevant, and saying, I like the category, but can you create something more here and now for me as a benefit? And we said, okay, what if we incentivize you for staying healthy? And today everyone uses smartphone. We can track what you're doing physically, and what if we reward that? Because physical health is one big part of the whole process of staying healthy. It's possible. Consumers loved that idea. Many of us in India actually are living with these lifestyle conditions of diabetes, asthma. We are the world capital, and health insurance companies hardly do anything about it, other than paying claims when it comes. What if we kind of intervene in the lives of our consumers at that stage? So we picked up a few areas, to focus on, and it has worked out extremely well for us.
So when you talk of rewards, can you take us through how at a product level it works? Does this ride on top of a health plan that I buy, or can I just buy a wellness benefit? How does it work?
So, our core business remains health insurance, right? So the business is health insurance. So there is an underlying health, what I would say, health insurance offering like anyone else providing. Of course, we have, our bells and whistles to make it more attractive, On top of that, we have this proposition of what we call incentivized wellness. What it does is it has this whole journey of getting the consumers to know their health, encourage them to do something about their health, to do proactively to improve their health. And if the consumers demonstrate that they're doing something about improving their health, then reward them. If something still happens, then in any case you're protected because there is an underlying insurance cover here, right? So, and the question is, how do we do all of this, right? We said that, the whole journey of knowing your health starts with knowing, what is the medical condition of mine, right? And it need not be, taking a consumer for a whole day checkup and all of that. Even if I know my basic, what's my blood pressure level, what's my blood sugar level, do I have a good or bad cholesterol, am I obese, is my smoking habit impacting, my health, and so on and so forth. So we said, why can't we just create a very simple, know your health, what we call it the health assessment. So, and we can do it for people at home if they're willing to visit one of our kind of impaneled health centers. Like, it's just a 5-7 minutes journey, and so you go there, you get this health assessment done, and that's where your know your health journey starts. You do that, there's a tick. Depending on what the results are, we can grade consumers into red, yellow, and green, which means that we call it the healthy heart score. And then at least the consumers know then. So if there's something at risk, they can do something about it. Then we say, why don't you do something to improve your health? Now, improvement of health could be stay active, because there are different parts of health. Physical health, nutritional health, mental health. We picked up physical health to start with, because while nutritional is also very important, but measuring and tracking that is very more difficult, because how do you know what you're eating? Only the consumer can only tell us. Sometimes there is a friction there. But in physical health, with smartphones, I can track. So we have an app. Consumers download our app. They just connect that to, let's say, if you're a iOS user, just connect Apple Health. If you're an Android user, connect Google Fit. If you're a Fitbit user, connect Fitbit. If you are any of the bands. So we don't prescribe that you use this or that. I mean, whichever is the one that you're using, just kind of connect. So we start with consumer consent. We know how physically active they were. In fact, we can get more data if they give you sleep pattern and so on and so forth. But we picked up active. So and global standards say that if you're active for 10,000 steps a day, then you're active for that day. So we reward consumers for every day that they have, walked more than 10,000 steps, which is, we call it an active day. Now, consumers don't necessarily only walk, right? I can walk, I can run, so I can track that. Or sometimes people do exercises, they go to a gym. So we say, okay, no problem. You go to a gym. We have created a network with a partner of about 1,000 plus gyms across the country, where consumers walk in, and we can track using beacon technology that they actually spent 30 minutes or more in the gym. So that's an active day.
And do you give discounts for all of this?
Yeah, and then someone can say, I do yoga. We do a fitness assessment for them, which gives us an equivalent of active step. And so if you are active for more than 13 days in a month and have a green score of, on your medical checkup, then you get a 30% of your premium back. And there's a scale, so it starts from 0 up to 30%. Now, this is a very, very important thing. So the amount may not be material, if you ask me, but suddenly there is an engagement opportunity for us, and the consumers find this exciting. So we have seen that consumers say, oh, I was active 10 days in a month, next month I must do 11 days, 12 days, 13, and so on and so forth. So the whole business model becomes very, very interesting.
Have you been able to, at least partly succeed in solving the, two big problems that health insurance had from a consumer's perspective? One was the onboarding, right? And you would recall that 15, 20 years ago, this whole pre-existing illness thing was a very, a very significant drawback in bringing, consumers into health insurance, because for some ailment they were carrying, it would get rejected. And the second was, of course, the whole claim settlement process. That, you've had a problem, when you go and get your claim, it's rejected for various reasons. Have these twin problems in many ways been overcome by a company like yours, who is, now for 4 years sharply focusing on solving problems of health insurance?
So very, very relevant problems, Vivek, and they clearly came out as barriers when we did our own research. So the first one, and by the way, both are in a way that ultimately will be solved, the more the industry gets together. But let me share with you how we have attempted to solve it. So we said that the more we remove the exclusions from the product, and the exclusions are for reasons of pre-existing conditions, waiting period, and so on and so forth, the simple the product will become, and therefore the more relevant. So we said, step one, let's see what are the major reasons for pre-existing condition today. We found that people having diabetes, blood pressure problem, asthma, high cholesterol, these are all lifestyle conditions, right? These are you can manage it, but unfortunately when you get it, they stay with you for life, at least as it is today. So he said, and these people, if they had this condition, either they were loaded heavily, or in many, many cases they were denied insurance coverage. So we said, why don't we tackle this problem first, maybe with these 3 or 4 conditions which are highly prevalent in India. So we call it ABCD. Asthma, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes. So we brought out a product which actually covers consumers with these conditions from day one. No waiting period, and any condition related to that anytime in the future, you will get fully covered. So we said that we'll remove, at least in phase 1, we'll remove this as a major barrier. We've attempted to do a few other things. For example, we brought down the waiting period from 4 years to 3 years, and gave, in some of our recent offerings, we've even given the opportunity to reduce it further to 2 years, so that we remove the exclusions more and more and more. Now, you cannot completely remove it, then your product from a pricing perspective will become completely, differently priced and market, and then you have the pricing challenge as well. So we have attempted to do that in phases. So this problem, we've attempted to solve it like this. What we also do is make sure that consumers understand this. So we call up consumers, we do about 90% of our sales digitally, so feedback goes to consumers, and this is what you have reported, and so on and so forth, and there's no future dispute. So that's how we have at least made a beginning for the first problem. The second problem, if you ask me, is actually even bigger, because when a customer buys, the only reason is that they want to be financed when that event happens, right? And when it doesn't happen, it creates obviously a large heartburn, and impact on the reputation of the category. So we said there are 2-3 reasons why this claim challenge happens. One is where consumers do not understand what are the true what I call inclusions and the exclusions in the product. So there's a need to make sure that when they buy the product, you explain them. So what I mentioned in the first part. So we do a special welcome call to consumers, explain them. Now, fortunately, we are leveraging this whole WhatsApp for Business, which is a much more relevant, communication mode. So that the whole idea is make the consumers more and more aware. So try and keep reducing that. The other problem is just a process friction. You go to a hospital, the hospital will seek a pre-authorization. Even though India, we create technology for everyone in the world, but in many places our old technology is so archaic, and the way the payer, which is a health insurance company, and the provider, the hospital, they actually integrate with each other is amazing, because we are all working in a paper-based era. Everything is flowing paper-based. So someone at the health insurance company has to look at that data. At best, you will have portals where the information flows through the portal, but someone is looking at that data. There has to be eyeballing. Then you decide what to do. Then at bigger problem at the discharge stage, where the hospital will inform the insurance company, the papers will flow, someone will look at it, and take all of this is taking a lot of time. This problem cannot be solved by one insurance company alone. Sure. Because the answer to that is that at an industry layer, what we call an exchange between the payer and the provider. So that data flows through that exchange seamlessly. Now, if there is one common or maybe 2 common exchanges, both sides you have to just integrate once or twice, because all hospitals will not integrate with all insurance companies. All insurance companies will not integrate with all health insurance companies from a technical perspective. So we have, I think industry is working towards that. But what we in the interim did as a company was, we said for every claim that is lodged with us, and we're informed in the cashless scheme of things, we have a team of what we call virtual care managers. Their job is to make the whole experience of consumers at the hospital or their families, in whichever case, as the case may be, as peaceful as it can be, because it's already a moment of stress. You don't want to deal with where do I run around, whom do I contact, why is my approval not coming, why is the discharge getting delayed. So the job of these virtual care managers, who are kind of paramedics trained medically and have been know the hospital ecosystem well, is to remotely make sure that the whole process works. So if there's any disconnect in the process, they immediately get in touch with the hospital. They help the consumers. If the consumer has, a patient has, or the family has any problem, they can call them up and they can explain. In the larger cities, what we also do is we actually have what we call physical care managers. These are like nurses and trained paramedics, even one level higher, whom in cases of senior citizens, or let's say a lady being alone, the husband is traveling, and so on and so forth, we even send them to the hospital to make sure that they are able to take care of these situations. To at least it reduces the friction in the whole process. It makes the experience more wholesome.
One final question. I find a lot of people engaging around disease-specific covers these days, Mayank. And companies like yours offer disease-specific covers. You've been part of the life insurance sector for a while, and you've seen that there is a disease-specific cover being offered. From a consumer's point, that could tend to confuse, right? That what do I opt for? So, if you were telling a consumer that if you want to say, for example, cover yourself from cancer, what do? Do you go get yourself a critical illness cover? Do you get yourself a reimbursement kind of a cover, or do you get both? How does it work?
Yeah, so my advice there will be that every customer must have what I call the base indemnity cover, which covers all conditions. Because we don't decide what medical conditions we will get in the future, right? I mean, anything can happen at any point of time, unfortunately. And so that should be a base, and with a reasonably right sum assured, because in India the problem is not just low health insurance coverage in terms of people buying, but even people who are buying buying low coverage. People will buy 3 lakh, 5. I mean, I was amazed that so many people actually buy very low sum assured of 300,000 and all. And in today's environment, you don't know where this money can be spent, unfortunately. So that should be the base of adequate sum assured. On top of that is when you should think of buying the critical illness offerings. And there, of course, there are a range of critical illness offerings. There's a critical illness offering which is very comprehensive, covers virtually everything that you can think of. We feel that we have one of the most comprehensive critical illness benefits that one can provide. The critical illness offering is actually, sits on top. The reason is that it's what is called a fixed benefit, a lump sum amount. That if, unlike the first base cover, which is reimbursement on actuals subject to the sum assured, the second one is, irrespective of what you may or may not spend, if that event happens, unfortunately, the customer gets the full sum assured. So if someone buys let's say a 50 lakh critical illness cover, if one of the event in that list happens, then the customer gets. So this is to make sure that not just the actual expense is reimbursed in the base cover. This provides additional financial support, because if a health event happens, it's not just about the cost at the hospital. It's also about financial distress. You may be out of work for some time. If you're on job, if you're self-employed, again you may. So and there are other costs, financial costs involved. So this takes care of that cost. Now within this critical illness, there are specific offerings of cancer and heart and all of that. We also provide that. My advice will be that you should go for the comprehensive one, just in case at that stage you are not in a position to financially invest that. Then maybe one can cover buy cover for a list of benefits which are more likely to happen, probability is higher, cancer, heart condition and all of that. There are subsets of those benefits. I think that's minimum what one can get. And I just want to add there that this, by the way, should happen irrespective of whether you are employed in a corporate or not, because many people now think that just because there's a corporate coverage, they don't need their own. And I see now, in being in the category for a few years, I receive calls from so many people who are close to their retirement and say, hey, I didn't buy insurance coverage, unfortunately. Now I'm trying to buy, I'm not getting, because I have some conditions.
Or facing a job loss, for example, which is a reality, right? You lose your job and there goes your cover.
Absolutely. And many people, it may not be even job loss. You may want to start something on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So at that stage, what do you do if you don't have a history? So I think having the base is absolutely necessary. And then you should think of those other benefits, is what my advice will be.
Pleasure talking to you like always. Thank you very much, Mayank, for joining me here. That was Mayank Bathwal here on the Policy Bazaar show, talking to you all about health insurance. As they say, the first step towards financial planning is getting your health insurance in place. And do not delay it. Do not depend on just your employer providing it for you. Most importantly, health is also about making sure you stay fit, making sure you stay healthy. And that's what Mayank has told you about the wellness benefits. Thanks for watching this episode. Hope you take care of your health.